Minutes.
Excuse me?
The minutes.
Yeah, that's next.
Oh, I'm sorry, you said a consent agenda. Apologize.
I'm just saying, the usual items are on here.
I jumped the gun on you. There we go, I'm gonna get hit with that gavel.
Didn't we have this discussion?
We did.
Yeah, it is time to approve the minutes of our May 8th, 2024 meeting. Is there a motion regarding these minutes?
I think Mike should make it.
Go ahead, Mike. No one wants to block you now,
Mr.
man.
President, I move to approve the May 8th, 2024 minutes.
I think that's a great idea.
And
Is
then,
there a second?
I'll second.
Motion from Mike Neal and a second from Bunkefist. We are all present in the room, so we can do this with a voice vote. Everybody in favor of approving the May 8th minutes signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Is there anybody opposed or abstaining on these minutes? Minutes are approved. If staff could now please review the rules of procedure for tonight's meeting.
Yep, so tonight's meeting is a workshop meeting, so we just have a few rules to cover, general procedures. So the department will introduce the petition, stating when the item was last before the Plan Commission. The Plan Commission and petitioner will then discuss the changes made to the ordinance, using the issue list as a guide for the discussion. We will also use the staff report and the presentation to aid in the discussion as well. Once the discussion has been finished, the department will summarize the final changes that are expected to be made prior to the petition returning to this body for a recommendation. And just a few rules of conduct: please do not disrupt the proceedings in any way. If you need to have a private discussion, then we ask that you please quietly exit the room. Please silence your devices at this time. If you must answer them, then we ask that you please quietly exit the room. We would like to remind everyone attending virtually to please mute your microphone when not speaking. Thank you. And that will be all for this evening for the rules.
Thank you. Moving on, as noted, there is a consent agenda item tonight, or consent agenda that includes two items. Ready for our approval. Is there a motion regarding the consent agenda?
Make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll second.
From Billy Bunkefist, was it?
Yes, sir.
And seconded by Mark Keen. To approve the consent agenda, if staff will please call the roll.
Mr. Bunkefist?
Yes.
Mr. Vorke?
Yes.
Dr. Keen?
Yes.
Mr. McCarty?
Yes.
Mr. Mooney?
Yes.
Mr. Neal?
Yes.
And Mr. Woodard?
Yes.
Excellent, consent agenda is approved. Moving on, that takes us to our workshop item for tonight. Petition 2403-PUD-07, the Osborne Trails PUD Amendment 6. Staff can provide an intro and then we'll hear from the petitioner.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President, members of the Planning Commission. For the record, Kevin Todd, Community Development Department, pinch-hitting for Dane Crabtree on this one this evening. As you may recall, this property is located to the east of West Fork Whiskey on the north side of 191st Street, east of Horton Road. This received a public hearing at your April 1st meeting, where there were comments made regarding tree preservation, architectural standards, commercial uses, and short-term rental restriction discussion. So since then, there's been some updates made to the draft concept plan, and with that, I think we'll turn it over to the development team to walk through any changes that they want to discuss this evening, and walk through the updated concept plan. So with that,
Thank you.
thanks.
Mr. Brown, the floor is yours,
I have 10 printouts.
or whoever it is that wants to take the lead.
Yeah, I'll start, and we'll start by actually handing out a slightly revised concept plan that is hot off the presses. But I think leaving that one up there is great, because it shows a couple of the things that aren't on this concept plan. So, for the record, Russell Brown with Clark Quinn Law, David McIntyre from West Fork is playing passer outer, Jonathan Isaacson and others from around here as well. So, start with concept plan changes. What you have in front of you is substantially the same as what's on the screen, with one change, and that's the orientation of the proximity to the property line of the southernmost road. Entry off of 110th Street.
It's okay.
The goal here and I will start back up and say that almost all the discussion items tonight come from either your comments, from further comments of council members, and comments from the Economic Development Department. So we've, in the last 6 weeks, David and the team have been busy meeting with those groups to try to get better feedback. One of the constant comments has been about that access point off of 191st Street. There's been a lot of discussion about should there even be one? And then if so, who should it serve? How should it come into the property? And so the reorientation shown on the site plan that's before you, we think has kind of general consensus from members of the council about what they were hoping to see coming off of 191st Street. The goal being that it creates an opportunity for development to the east without having to have a separate curb cut for future commercial development to the east. That's the genesis of part of that conversation. And then secondly, what it does is it has allowed in the concept plan for us to show and be a little more dialed in on what commercial development might look like on the southern portion of the property. If you remember, there was significant discussion about how much should there be, how should it be oriented, how does it interface with West Fork's current development. I think what's on the concept plan, both on the screen and before you, is kind of where the plane has landed on size, how it's oriented to both 191st Street and internally. We have made changes in the ordinance so that there can be no parking between building facade and 191st Street, so to keep all of the parking kind of internal. There has been significant work done on permitted uses and excluded uses in that commercial area, again, trying to marry up the vision we talked about in April about this becoming, a district use, walkable, where you're having complementary and like uses nearby to each other. Joked about alcohol tourism. I think that's probably a likely, another opportunity for a local alcohol distributor or manufacturer to be part of that, so that for example, a microbrewery is a permitted use under the use table as we've provided it. So on the commercial area, I wanted to make sure we talked about that because that change to the road is driven largely by that requested configuration. What's not shown on the site plan here, and why I asked this to be up here, some of the outdoor amenity space that's part of the district concept. It will be added to the concept plan that comes part of the ordinance, but it's not on this version, so I wanted to make sure we left that up there. One of the biggest changes I think we've made here relates to the location of the dog park, and we heard through conversations throughout this process, the dog park should be more internal and seem like less of an afterthought. And so we've tried to move it more internal to the site generally. Have some additional kind of, layout concepts or more, maybe a little more developed layout concept for the rack house, the outdoor stage, the amenities on the side of the townhomes where that kind of pier concept or overlook concept. So tried to give a little more definition to that as we've moved through this process. Another thing that has happened is we are no longer attempting to add that kind of cutout at the northwest corner to this project. That was hoped that we could do that and get consent, get a deal in place, but that's not come to fruition through this process. So that's been removed out as a concept. As it relates to some of the architectural requests and modifications related to the town, let me back up. We did also add inspiration images, character images for the dog park specifically to the ordinance, so that's been a little bit further fleshed out as we've moved through this process as well. So that is included as an exhibit to the ordinance. We have in the townhomes, one of the requests was to provide for material percentages on the elevation, so that's been added as a separate exhibit. I think it is exhibit, there you go. So that calls out for each facade. And I think it's easier for me to determine what material as you work through. So that's been added as an exhibit as well. So, I think from the issue list, I think that largely addresses those issues, and kind of as we've worked through with additional conversations with counselors and the Economic Development Department, how we've landed specifically on the commercial development. So did I miss anything, David?
No, I would just say, this is my second time going through zoning. Not a developer. I make whiskey for a living and try to provide people a good time. It's usually my goal. But what I've learned is every time I go through this, we end up getting to a better product at the end of the day. So appreciate all the comments, appreciate all the feedback. I think we're gonna get to a project that's gonna make APC proud, council proud, West Fork Whiskey proud, and at the end of the day, the city of Westfield proud. So appreciate all the feedback and comments.
Jonathan, anything I missed from your side? Okay.
Thank you. Fellow commissioners, we are here to workshop. So anybody with thoughts, questions, comments for petitioner's team or staff, feel free to take the floor. Regarding the road change, I like what's on here better, and I'd like to look forward to perhaps whenever it is that something might happen to the east, that the smaller stub that goes out that way maybe could become a full access, and maybe this just ends up being right in, right out. If there's concerns about the future of the road that is reflected in what's built, but the road itself hasn't made the change to the nifty little X that we have designed up there. I assume that there will be no issue extending Street A out to the current Horton Road, since the change will not occur probably before this happens.
Correct.
The first thing that sticks out to me on this, up here by that parcel that I think was originally talked about was there, and if it was in here, I missed it, but was there some contemplation on screening in addition to, like the one tree, was it fencing, or what did we decide?
Yeah, so I think we can talk a little bit about just views into from exterior to the townhomes. I think originally we were hoping to get that parcel included so that it could be treated and screened kind of the same way the southern, by having a building facade.
Yeah.
Be that, so that's obviously not come to fruition. So we haven't built anything in to the ordinance as it exists today for screening of those side facades or view into the alleys. That's not been built into the ordinance at this point.
Okay.
I will say that this plan
Yeah.
does not have all of the landscaping. We've been jumping through a lot of hoops to get
Right.
these plans developed in certain timelines. So the plan that we'll have by Friday is gonna show the full landscaping plan. It's not just like one tree right there. That's not the goal, just to have one tree there.
Yeah, I think just out of respect to the property owner there and the respect out of the future new property owner that sits there, something substantial should be there.
So Chris, are you talking to the east? I wanted to make sure I caught your.
Wiley property.
Right
west.
here, sorry.
Yeah, this
Some sort of
right
buffer.
here.
Gotcha, okay.
Yeah, I don't know
I
what.
will say that property will likely be taken via eminent domain when
Eventually.
the road is built.
right.
Cause the road goes through their front yard for the most part.
If I can add
Yeah, that's fair.
a little bit of color, from a landscaping perspective, and this probably gets into architecture a little bit as well, discussion, but as a land planner, I don't like the idea of being able to see right down the alleyways, from the roadway. So we definitely wanna find, screening for that, and obviously the end of that alleyway is into the rear of that home site.
Yeah.
As well. So we definitely should have, I don't know, whoever's online will get to see my pointing, but that the landscaping at the end of this alleyway here, should be able to be beefed up. Obviously, we've got drainage and other things, and we're talking about a sidewalk that comes, from Aberdeen, whether it comes down through here or comes back this direction, which is the previous version had. We should be able to find some landscapable here, and then maybe even some here. Obviously, we're getting into the pipeline here, but the idea is to really kind of soften that look. Not necessarily, you're not gonna screen everything, but obviously at a lower level, try to take some of that view corridor of that entire alleyway.
Yeah, that's really the one that sticks out to me the most, and that's a good point though, the one to the south of it makes a little more sense too, but that one up there. Even in the future, when the road does shoot up through there, and I would think that would still be headlights shooting out into the road coming from that alley.
Yeah, I mean,
It's a two-way alley, right?
Yeah, two-way alley.
Yeah.
I mean, anything that we can do now, obviously the road, if you can extrapolate where that right-of-way line is gonna be extended, right kind of through the backside of the house. So you still have quite a bit of space between the back of the existing property to where that alley starts. Again, if we can landscape it well up front, when the road gets designed, probably discussion on what happens, there would be some excess property.
The arc that is at the westernmost extent of that green area, that actually, in looking at our GIS map, is the right of way. It's not further back where you had.
Oh, the green line is,
So, yeah.
Yeah.
okay, so it kind of goes through the house.
Future right away probably goes.
The house would be not too many feet back from the right of way
Right.
whenever that would need to be extended.
Is, and if you said this, I apologize, is the timeline of Horton, what was that again? I mean, it's still unknown, right? Part capital improvement, 27 maybe, or 28 perhaps, so I don't know what your timeline is for this, but is there an anticipation of connecting to Horton there until that's done? And it's just not shown as a full connection yet, just accounting for the future roadway?
Yeah, we'd wanna make that connection to the existing Horton Road.
And then did I hear you say you'll have an updated plan Friday? Is that what you had said?
That's when we have to submit by.
Will that have the updated amenities on like your submittal timeline? Cause you say it'll mirror this, but it's clear like the roadway shift got rid of that southern outdoor area, right? Given building two's shift north. So I'd like to see that before any approval would be considered.
For sure.
That is our goal.
And that was something I was confused by as well, it's just having the updated map that, the middle area with the stage and barreling facility, it's not on this one, and then, the outdoor area to the south and the dog park as well. So hopefully in what will be submitted, everything there will be.
those will be,
yeah. For dog park specifically, where's the new location on the map that was handed out?
Same area
It's
as
not
us.
intended to move.
Okay. And then just a few other things that I'm confused by, cause just in conversations, whether it be, trying to help the project or feedback from my fellow counselors, of one thing being made clear to me from them was wanting to have lesser, townhome units, specifically the one there that's southernmost. A couple of counselors were wanting that one eliminated at least. And then having some sort of connection between the two parking lots over the pipeline. I know that's also been mentioned to me by a few counselors as well. So I'm just trying to be a little proactive here of additional outstanding concerns.
Two questions there. One goes back to his question, like we want to have frontage that is showing the beautiful, the whole units are beautiful, but showing the frontage of units, especially to 191st Street. Remove that southern unit and you're looking directly into an alleyway as you're coming in is, in our opinion, a mistake. So that's certainly important. And the way the road has been changed, removing that unit doesn't make much room for more commercial at all. Could fit a 500 square foot building with some parking spots, maybe, but there's not a lot of room there. So that would be my first response to that, and Johnny can comment any more on that one. And sorry, Ryan, what was the second one?
The connection between the two parking lots.
Yeah, the connection. It's something we've looked at a lot. I will say that I've dealt with this pipeline and with the company that owns it, and it's a tricky one, especially going further south. The amount of soil we have over that pipeline gets less and less and less. And you know, I've looked at the rules that they have in terms of adding soil and things like that, and connecting those parking lots will be difficult just because of the depth of the pipeline. And we can't really promise that we can cross it at the southern point there without consent in advance.
Can I ask you, so I used to be the state's pipeline safety director in a previous life, so I have a lot of knowledge on the pipeline side. So this is a Centerpoint or Vectren pipeline, correct, to your knowledge?
Yeah, it has a new owner now.
Centerpoint.
Centerpoint now, yeah.
Yeah, Vectren was bought by Centerpoint out of Texas. And so have they told you what the and again, this has probably all been done prior to being here, so I may just be asking questions that some people already know the answer to. Have they already run, because you're saying that the topsoil over this line has a shallower depth, have they told you that specifically? Have they given you records that it's that?
We have the depths from whenever we built this.
You potholed it originally probably, right?
Yeah, we have the depths because it went into all of our original development.
Of the original facility?
Correct.
Okay, gotcha, I'm sorry, okay.
Yeah, they let us cross it on that north side. You can see that we cross it on our back parking lot.
Right.
And that will connect to that barrel warehouse there. But I know that, you know, the discussion was that we couldn't, you know, it was gonna be difficult to take that parking lot any further over to that easement.
Yeah, they also did a storm line crossing as well with the agreement.
Is it
I
a
think you
high,
ended up underneath.
Yeah.
Is this a high pressure line? So I looked at it's not a transmission line, cause I just checked the National Pipeline Mapping System, so it's not considered high pressure at a federal level. Are they talking about this being, cause that's what I'm getting at. So typically when you put a development such as this along a line like this, if it's a high pressure line, they're not gonna want you to do it because it becomes a high consequence area, which means they have a lot more mitigation to do. Pipeline companies don't typically like that, especially Centerpoint. And so I guess my thought was, and I had expressed this at our pre-meeting on Wednesday about this topic. Obviously, my understanding is that they kind of signed off in the TAC review. I guess I'm looking at staff now. Centerpoint did they have any comments to this? I guess let me start with that before I ask any more for the petitioner.
That agency would have reviewed the plans at that time. I'm not for sure if they had comments or not, but it was obvious, it was approved in some form to develop.
And so
that
this is my ignorance, so excuse me, through the TAC process. So is there a final report that's produced from the TAC review from the different agencies that say I have no comment or I have X comment? And if so, do we know if there are Centerpoint comments?
The petitioner is required to sign an affidavit that they provided the plans to the gas company
Okay,
for review.
so it's
but
on them.
It's typically between
Got it.
the petitioner, the developer, and the direct utility.
Okay,
Yeah, and
So-
then we're brought in if there's any issue to remedy.
so then,
Those encroachment agreements would have occurred
Yeah,
yeah,
after TAC, outside of.
got it, thank
discussion,
you. So in that respect then, so as it is, Centerpoint has said we're okay with this plan.
I haven't received any comments to them just, you know, receiving plans or on this version of this expansion version.
So let me ask that a previous version, you would have that assurance currently? As opposed, what sounds like staff says that would have been upon you to have.
No,
Okay.
with what was distributed when the public notice went out for this originally, the
Yeah.
TAC agencies received that notice at that time. I've never received any comments
Got
from
it.
Centerpoint.
I would not assume silence is approval.
No, I would never with Centerpoint, ever in my life. Okay, cause we obviously adding the homes, I mean, if they, you know, but now you're adding a bunch of crossings, but also at the same time, typically roads, like I said, unless there's a depth problem, but if they have a high pressure line that's shallow, that's a bigger problem. If I were you, or if I were someone who lived there, I would want that lowered. Because anytime, any other type of work could hit that, and that becomes a high consequence area if you're talking 100 pounds or more pressure. Because then you have to evacuate that area when the line is set. So I mean, as a petitioner, I would, even if you don't do the road, and I'll leave that to the council to decide whether or not they think that's important to them, that's why we elect them. But as a petitioner, just as a word of caution, I would really want to know the entire depth of that. Because if they're telling you, you can't build a road here because it's too shallow, then you have other concerns because it's shallow. And if they're not telling you that, because council clearly is gonna ask the question, well, prove to us that you can't do this. So it's a two-way street here.
And Mike, I'd piggyback that if it's not high pressured, when you first evaluated this, had you contemplated or at least quoted a relocation effort for that line? I mean, just out of curiosity, now that we're saying dead center, if it's not high pressure, I mean, that's something that happens every day. I personally just did it 6 months ago.
All road
right?
projects would
Yeah,
typically have that
exactly.
type of.
As long as it's not high pressure. So again, I'm going off of your word that federally it's not classified as such. But was that an effort initially or a thought?
It was not. I'm not a pipeline
Nope.
expert
Who
by
is, right?
I love that you're an expert at what you're in, because we're very happy that you're here. But
yeah, I try to do the best at what I do.
Well, and I think, and my question stems so, again, in understanding that a new road is ambiguous and whatever that happens may happen, right? I mean, there's no time like the present when you start talking about a contemplated new roadway to then actually relocate that line as part of the new right of way and increase your ability to do what you wanna do accordingly. But again, if it's cost prohibitive, it's cost prohibitive. I'm just curious.
Clarification.
I don't think I would have the information to answer that question, cost-wise anyway.
I would guess that they don't wanna move their line for anyone unless they absolutely have to.
Well, they never do, and they usually charge you extra to move it as a result. I mean, you're at the mercy of them, basically.
Well, again, if it's incredibly high pressure, it over the span of time in which they operate the line, it would behoove them to move it, because again, if this population count, it's all based on a sliding scale of per mile, what type of consequence level it will be, which means what kind of operations and maintenance they need to do, what kind of line checks they need to do, integrity digs. I mean, I'm guessing that because this line goes through other places, we've heard that there's been other consternation on this line in the past in Westfield.
It's a 6-inch line and it runs through the other neighborhood. It's just got built north of there, so I don't.
So I mean, it may not. I couldn't determine the pressure, and I'm not the director anymore, so I don't know.
We're having all
Through
this
the middle of
discussion.
Graham Park.
Victor, you kind of started with relaying council comments.
Yeah.
Now, this hot off the presses version below the more northern commercial building has what appears to be a sidewalk that is not on that plan, but it also doesn't have on here a plan that does seem to be up there. But there is a pedestrian connection here.
Yeah.
Were your colleagues actually thinking that we needed to somehow or other get vehicular access between the two parking lots? Or is it just a matter of being able to use the Westport lot in that corner near those buildings and be able to walk?
It was more, even though the pedestrian access is more than appreciated because I deem that necessary, it was more so on the vehicular side and just trying to have some forward thinking in the future that, especially with possible users that are intended here and being interconnected, creating a little, just activation space. Say if you have future wide events, so on and so forth, festivals, and users that complement your own, you're gonna want that connectivity back and forth because you're not gonna want someone to have to, say they're in one parking lot, drive from 191st to go around just to get to West Fork and vice versa. So again, it's just, while we're looking at it, trying to be forward thinking, and then to your point, and as well as Billy's point, really several points have been mentioned. The precedent is there that if there are homes being built over this pipeline, or if there are access roads already being built over the pipeline, then it seems that it's not a high-risk pipeline, so the opportunity being there, just try and take advantage of it.
And I would say too, bouncing off the counselor's point, we're talking about this being cohesive. That's been how this has been sold, and I love the idea. My wife and I love your facility.
Thank you.
The plan itself, I like. If I were not married, as much as I like bourbon, I might probably live here.
If I didn't have 2 dogs, I'd have a townhome too.
But to that point, when we're talking about cohesion, this really takes away from that argument, in my opinion. And there may be other struggles. I'm not.
No, I'm agreeing with you.
Okay.
If it's possible to connect the parking lots, I would love to do it.
Okay.
As a petitioner.
Yeah.
The lawyer and the developer might disagree with me on that one, but I would love to have them connected, but I can't put anything on paper and guarantee that it's gonna happen when it's a third party dictating if it's possible. It's not my pipeline, it's not my,
Well, I'd be interested to know how deep it is under 191st, cause it's not that far away from a existing road.
Well, and I think either way, just going to have some record to be able to show once it gets to council, why we are doing it or why we are not doing it, because I know the others will be asking that question, why that connector is not there.
How many parking spaces are at West Fork?
I
You remember?
believe we're at 143.
And it's sufficient for your needs all the time,
Yeah,
most of the
we're
time?
approved for an additional parking lot to build on the north side of our facility in that green space. That's already been approved.
Okay, and the clarity of these two drawings, especially the one that we had online, the lot count there is less than what's in front of us. What are those two numbers? How much of an increase did that lot between the two new commercial buildings that are proposed?
So I think we got up into the 90s with the change of that road. I wanna say 94.
96 maybe, could be that number? And what was it on that one, or do you know?
68.
So nearly a 50% increase. or
Yeah, when
30%
I
increase
met with
anyway.
Dane a week and a half ago, and his first comment was,
6 to me.
well, there's not enough parking for two buildings, and I said, we're working on it. And we went back and, getting the road changed solved two major problems. There's been a lot of issue with cuts on 191st Street. We obviously have the Birch development that has 3 cuts, and the fear is with our development and to our east, how many more cuts are there gonna be? And we tried to solve this problem with saying, we can do a cut that will service the parcel to our east, and Birch has another one that's on their property line to their west side, or sorry, east side.
West side of their
On the west side.
Yeah, west side of Birch's property, that we could not have another cut going in on her 91st Street down the line if and when that property gets developed. And with that, changing that road, we got to add a significant amount more parking to service these, 19,000 square feet of commercial.
That probably does change Birch's plan a little bit, because I don't think that was a roadway, that was an alleyway that was coming out to 191st Street, isn't it?
His westernmost.
Yeah, his westernmost,
That's
A full?
that's a road.
okay. Then we are good.
Yeah. So we've improved the overall serviceability of all of these things. But if there is truly a goal to be cohesive and make them more directly connected, that's still a problem that needs to remain on the think about it and figure out what you can do list.
And I feel like I'm beating a dead horse here, but Chris had showed me the map of the pipeline, and the precedent to the south is that it's gerrymandered wherever they could get it. Pipelines take the path of least resistance, easy to do it. And then the Horton precedent is it follows the right of way straight up. And so if there's an opportunity to relocate this gas line, which if it's not high pressure, there is always an opportunity. You'd be able to expand your parking accordingly. You'd be able to increase your retail footprint accordingly. And so I would really, really appreciate that being investigated appropriately.
When you say investigated, feasibility and cost, because I think feasibility is probably one question, cost is probably,
That's part of feasibility, in my opinion.
Correct. No, I fully agree with that statement, right? If you come back and say it's cost prohibitive, and that could be $2 for you, I don't know, it's not for me to decide. But it's just to understand again, is it possible? And again, there's a cost benefit analysis for you to do. Okay, maybe we could increase our retail by another 4,000 square feet because we were able to do this accordingly. And we can relocate. It's just for my development, but it's not, again, love your place, Billy Behind the Bar is fantastic, okay, so it's not, great name too, by the way, but, just the point is, that cohesion, that ability to enhance that centralized corridor, I just wouldn't want a long green space, I wanna be able to try to connect if at all possible.
And I'm happy, I know a person that works out of Noblesville that works with their public awareness team, which is specific to things along pipeline right of ways. If I could be helpful, I would be happy to put you in contact with someone that, I don't know who you've spoken to. And if they're clearly not sending comment back, we don't really, you're doing your part, but we don't know if they're really seeing it. And maybe there's one opportunity to take a stab at someone actually showing up and taking a look at things. Happy to do that, but you can also turn it down.
I would take that as being helpful. I think, I think the plans end up going to like Evansville.
Well, I think.
That's where their headquarters is
Right,
at, yeah,
so-
for Indiana.
So whether or not
Yep.
it gets back to the local,
Yeah,
local planning
districts.
engineer.
Yep.
Yeah.
God forbid you go to Houston, that is literally earthly purgatory. There's nothing coming out of it, so, understood, right, but would love if you looked at it.
I mean, historically, Vectren is probably the easier of most of the pipeline companies that we dealt with. I don't know if CenterPoint changes that, but
It did. As their previous
As they get
regulator, their previous regulator, it absolutely did.
I just remember whenever we dealt with them when we were building our facility, getting any feedback from them in 60 days was a massive challenge.
Which is problematic, and again, not to belabor the point, but typically they have to be responsive by federal code, and when they're not responsive, it's a violation in which they could be fined, because it's heavily regulated, because gas is very dangerous. And so if I had known that a couple of years ago, I might have been barking up their tree. It's not my job to do that anymore, but
there's somebody that has that job.
there is, my predecessor, in fact, does have that job, but anyway, sorry, Counselor, didn't mean to cut you off.
You're fine. Shifting gears just a smidge, regarding Exhibit G and just the exhibits for, the commercial characters. I don't really have any issues on the commercial characters, I think they fit well with the area. And I was also, just to add an additional name out there, I was doing some, research on, another project that's gonna be before us here shortly on just facade and so forth. And I came across a brewing company out in Virginia, and how they have their layout, and it kind of looked similar to this. Yeah, I have it put up on my screen, that's not very helpful for everyone else. But that would give very much so a feel of the area. You have kind of that concert venue, kind of the industrial look, so forth, string lights, so on and so forth like that. So I think as you move closer towards that goal of just, again, pending the connector, with West Fork and other potential users, of just creating a big venue space that everyone's gonna be able to utilize there. And then one to just discuss, the MI product, and comparing the exhibits from last meeting to this meeting. Outside of the 2 additional documents, visually, there wasn't much change. So just in comparison, what are some highlights that you might be able to share of how it will look differently compared to what, again, I mentioned this previously, that's already in the market with Bonterra? Is it going to look different, or is it still the same?
Yes, it's gonna look different. We are re-elevating the building, and we are coming up with a new color scheme for the building. I don't have it yet. I should have it this week, hopefully. But really, we're taking the colors off of the existing West Fork building, and we're gonna invert the color. So instead of it being an all white building, there'll be areas of lighter color, areas of darker color that are consistent with what you see on their building. And the brick will not be painted on the new building, so there'll be a little more pop of color in addition to that. So right now, unless you walk up to those buildings in Bonterra, you don't even know that there's any masonry on those, because they're painted the same color as the siding, and that was intentionality with that particular situation. So what we plan on doing is having a different brick color than the rest, and so you have a brick color, then you have a light and a dark contrasting set of colors on the building as well.
Okay, good. That's pretty much the feedback I gave them last time, so, before we're able to give a recommendation, especially before being able to vote at council, I'm sure that's something that everyone will wanna to see, is just the distinction of that, so.
I'll
appreciate
make
it.
sure we have that this week.
Very good. I like the sounds of that. Ryan, Mark? Anything?
I guess final question,
Are you still-
they're gonna have, still going over here, if they,
Somewhere or
Glad we put you over there.
If they have it this week, and if we have any questions, comments, concerns when we get it provided, should we just run through you and then let you liaison that to staff? Once we get the updated plans,
Well,
because it sounds like it'll be before us, or will they be back before us? What's the procedure here?
Yeah, they'll have this week to
Correct?
put all of this through their mill and come up with something that addresses as best as they can all of these concerns. That will be submitted to staff, which will then be reviewed, and we don't see it again until the agenda is posted for our next meeting.
It'll come back
If either, some,
Well, but they won't come, that's what I wanna make sure though, so they'll come looking for recommendation based off of these
they'll be
updates.
back for a
And
recommendation
so
in their
there's
next
color
meeting.
changes happening and we haven't seen an outdoor plan, and so we won't be able to provide any feedback. And they very well may get a no and then get stuck coming back to a workshop, or what's that look like?
Yeah, I mean, that's possible.
Okay.
Right,
Well, they can still take it to the city council without our approval.
that's also
Correct, yeah.
possible.
Yeah.
I will say the outdoor plan hasn't changed really at all, other than condensing that outdoor space for commercial building two. To make room for more parking, which is just code. Otherwise, the outdoor space is remaining exactly the same as what you see here.
That's why, yeah, if you have a concern, I would just make that known now, so it can get incorporated into those final changes, so.
Okay.
And you don't know what you don't know, because they're gonna take our input and do what they do with it. We can't just keep saying, come back to another workshop.
Correct, that's what I wanna make sure we don't
The
do,
way it
right?
will work is, staff will get it and they'll determine that it has, all the compliance or what isn't, and then we'll see another staff report. And Mike and I will review the agenda on the Wednesday before the next scheduled meeting of the EPC on whatever the first Monday of June is. And that's when it'll be in front of us for a recommendation. In the event that there are things that have not been brought up yet, we really shouldn't be bringing up new things. But if there's something that's changed that's a concern, then that's material we should talk about. Anything that's on the plan today, it's our obligation to make sure we give them feedback on that. Because coming up with something that we could have tonight later is not fair to the petitioner. But in the event that they change something substantially that we have a concern about, there is an open possibility that we could say, I think we need to workshop this again, and then you come back in July for your recommendation. Hopefully that doesn't turn out to be the case. We want to get these things done as expeditiously as we can, but we do want to get it right too. It's gotta be compliant with the ordinances and all the commitments that have been exchanged.
If it's minor enough, you could have a discussion, right, the
At the
night,
time of
at the,
recommendation.
right, prior to a recommendation, if everybody feels like there's resolution after that conversation. And if there's.
It's not optimal to have
No,
a recommendation with
right.
conditions on it.
Right.
If there's things that are pretty black and white, no-brainer kind of things that, we'd like to recommend approval, subject to this thing here that's, pink and we want it blue.
Yeah.
Then we can do that. If there's too many complications, then we either need to say, let's not recommend it, or let's have another workshop.
And well, just going off of Billy's point though, that's what was worrisome to me is that, coming into the meeting, it was mentioned to me that there would be a possibility of different layouts and so forth. And so I was kind of just waiting for this meeting, seeing what it was gonna look like. And I see this and I'm like, not much has changed. And so we're, again, trying to be proactive in thinking, where I have concerns is we get to the recommendation meeting, but there might be still some concerns left over by council, or maybe something new has been brought up and the commissioner has a concern over it. And so, this meeting, this is where we're wanting to accomplish and resolve as many concerns as we can, but we're not gonna have the final updated renderings, whether for the concept plan of the overall development or for the MI product, until after this meeting. And so when we get to the next APC meeting, I don't wanna set a false expectation of there not still needing to be more time, because there will still be individuals that will have thoughts on that.
Victor, I think that's probably an internal process issue. If there's something they're bringing, right, that we're not satisfied, we probably need to talk to them, not to them, right? Like if they can't make changes between now and the next meeting, then we need to change our process, because that's absolutely okay to do, right?
we don't need to change our process. And we-
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Right, we don't talk to the petitioner, we talk to staff.
Yeah.
If there are enough complications that they don't have the ability to satisfactorily address what it is that we brought up, they'll just work longer.
Wait, yeah,
And
exactly.
come back later.
Yeah, I
They can
agree.
have dialogue with staff, they can have dialogue with the elected officials, they just
Yeah.
can't have dialogue with us. And we'll get a more finished plan at whatever point in time it is. The goal
Yeah.
would be to have it clear and obvious enough that we can accomplish all this tonight and have it back for the next meeting. If it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. If they need more time, they'll have to make that call on their own that we're not gonna be able to submit something that addresses satisfactorily what we heard on the workshop Monday. We'll be back for the following sequence.
I apologize if it's
Yeah.
confusing. The biggest concerns that we got from council were the road was by far the biggest one. And parking, for the commercial, maximizing that commercial space. And so we wanted to at least get something before you that showed changing that road to provide dual access to our property and the property to our east. That was a big, big one for us. And also putting the commercial on the map to show this is what we can maximize this commercial area to fit. It takes time for these graphic designers and architects and engineers to stamp these things and say, okay, yes, all of this works. And so we just tried to rush as fast as we could, cause I had a meeting last week that really got these concerns. So we rushed as hard as we could. And whenever they did it, they didn't have all the outdoor amenities put back on the plan and all that stuff. So I apologize for that, but I promise we're working as fast as we can.
And don't, like, since I'm the outspoken one tonight, apparently, like, I don't wanna downplay the fact, like, the use, it makes total sense, right? And incredibly excited for the use, and incredibly excited for what we're gonna do, and, you know, hey, we'll have, you know, the outdoor plans, it just, everything kept coming by Friday, right? And so it turned from one or two things to a pretty good list of things, and so this isn't I mean, it's a you problem in the sense I'd love to see it, right? But it was more of, hey, what does it look like for us to see those things ahead of the meeting? And it is just the agenda, and that's okay. And we'll trust that petitioner will have it ready, as they've stated, they'll have it ready in time for that meeting. So, thank you.
Cause
Somehow you can get a definitive answer from the pipeline folks.
Yeah.
Problematic though that may be, but if there's a resource that hasn't been tapped yet, and you can tap them. Find out definitively, can we do anything in this area or not? If you can, then there's probably something that you're gonna need more time to be able to figure out how to do. If there's a definitive, absolutely, no, you can't do anything there other than maybe walk across it. That's another set of circumstances that's a little bit easier, but not as desirable to our end, meaning primarily more council's end.
Yeah.
But that is kind of an important thing that's pending out there that I don't know how you get that answer before you need to put pen to paper and finish it up by Friday, but as best as you can, that's something you might wanna try to do. But failing getting that answer, I think you may be in a position where you might have to wait a little bit longer.
I'm just a question person here again, not a developer. We're obviously always working on a timeline, trying to get to a point that we can put a shovel in the dirt. And this is probably a Russell question actually, is can we come to an agreement that we would love to connect those parking lots if it's allowable by the third party who owns that easement? But if they say no, there's really nothing in our power to change that. Cause I would love to connect them. I would, that would be beneficial to my business and the overall development if it's possible.
Probably to make the parking lot bigger, if we can do that.
Yeah, exactly, that adds more spots too, that's to everyone's benefit. But dealing with these companies that own it, I remember the last time we did, I mean, it could be 6 months before we get a definitive answer from this company as to whether or not it's feasible.
And
That
we
scares
had
me.
Layout one, layout number two, and the difference between them was we got an answer that we can connect, so this is how we'll do it. We can talk about that.
Cause by plat committee, you know, you'll have that answer, whatever that may be, so.
So, just so I wanna be clear, I fully support this project with or without connectivity between the parking lots. And the changes that like suggested today, I get it, it'd be awesome, but if you don't get it, I still support this project.
Thank you.
So, yeah, I mean, that would be a way to do it, as I think we've done it a couple times before, of option one and option two, and that's, you know, if possible, this is what we're doing. I just did it last week, actually. Option one and option two, you know, these are what could be there. So I think that would be a way from a site plan perspective, that we're not coming back here to ask for blessing of an alternate site plan because we did or didn't get that additional
Yeah,
change.
option one, option two, subject to gas line company approval, or however you wanna word that. That would be satisfactory.
Yeah.
That'd be satisfactory.
Thanks, Sue.
Yeah, it just always scares me to put it all
Yep.
in a third party's, I
Understood.
can't control
I
it.
don't blame you.
We can totally commiserate. And like I think most of the group, I
So, I mean,
I think this would be
Whichever way
great
we have an option.
to have, and the sooner we can have it, the better. We do have some i's to dot, t's to cross, so whatever way we can best figure out how to make all that happen, possibly going down two parallel tracks that we won't know which one prevails until at some point in the future, but if we have two satisfactory options based on that pending decision, we can probably come up with some sort of an agreement to make that happen and say, yeah, let's do it. It may only be a few weeks, or maybe, you know, just before you have to start pushing a different direction that you finally figure that out. But if we know what the options are and it remains viable, then if staff can't think of some reason, or council can't think of some reason that that's a problem, then let's, you know, look forward to doing something like that.
I think that's perfect.
Can I address the question about the building? The elimination of the southernmost building, I think, is what I heard. And I know others might have even, I've heard maybe 3 buildings.
Others have gone farther than the one. yes.
Some have said to the southern portion
Some
of the
have
lake,
gone-
or yeah, something to that effect. And one of the things that concerns me a little bit is, as we've kind of master planned this together, trying to be cohesive and trying to keep them as one project that has walkability, has vehicular access, you know, via both. I mean, obviously, the parking, some overfull parking might occur on the roadway in peak times, especially for the outdoor use, where people are not going to West Fork, but they're going to an event or whatever. But if we just eliminate that building, the area that you're gonna increase from a commercial perspective is not gonna be very impactful, and probably eliminate some of the view vista as you drive in and create this pizzazz as you're looking into the front end of our residential building, rather than potentially looking into an alleyway, and that kind of thing. And obviously now with a roadway that cuts across in the future, that sets up that retail, you know, to the east. And, you know, that road could bend to the north a little bit. I mean, there's probably more opportunity for that piece to get, you know, it's a nice square. So, versus this one that is pinched with the pipeline and drainage and other things that you already have here. And then as the more we make those changes, then the pond size might not be the right size, the pond might have to grow. And then we come back and we gave you another 5,000 square foot commercial building, but we lost all the outdoor space because the pond was too small. So just be mindful of, there's a lot of relationship that goes between doing this to doing that, and negative effects, positive effects.
Has that pond been roughly engineered? I mean, that's one of the things that we run into at this stage is people show ponds at a zoning stage, but they really have no idea how big they actually need to be. I mean, how close are we?
I had a concerning comment from my engineer at 5:30 this afternoon.
Yeah.
That the pond, which is tight, got smaller with this last revision set. So it needs to be evaluated, and I agree with you. Pretty pictures get made, and then engineering steps in the way and says you can't do it,
And then people get disappointed that
that you can't deliver what was promised. Yeah.
So I guess that would be another thing to kind of maybe lock in a little bit more, the
Yeah, we actually,
closer, the actual size. I mean,
on that site plan too, we were talking about road separation, curb cut separation. There's some of those things that we gotta make sure that the boxes get ticked as we move through.
Or waivers that can be applied and granted.
so one of the things that sorry to jump in, since we're kind of talking about this area, one of our kind of initial, when we saw the revised plan come out, possibly maybe turning the northern building. You know, so it's maybe,
This building.
yeah, that one, turn it either 90 degrees or so it's more perpendicular to the pond or something. Just to kind of, again, I think trying to create like, you feel like you're in a cohesive development when you're in the commercial space. And maybe how does that work with West Fork? Maybe does, maybe doesn't, I don't know, but at least the two new buildings,
Fronting them to the roadway?
And the latest plan, Kevin,
yeah.
the edge of the water and the edge of the building are parallel to each other.
Well, that's.
But I feel like we can't go
That is-
off of that one if the engineer's saying
Yeah,
that you can't be that smart.
I don't know, just,
This is the situation of going from a landscape architect doing a pretty picture to giving it to the engineer that looks at the drainage, right? And we have to do both.
or is there an opportunity to do like L-shaped buildings or something, just so like you're creating this, not just buildings on the either end of a parking lot, but that you're creating a
To
little bit
fitting it
more
into
of
the
a,
drainage area.
feeling like you're gonna, in a little bit more of a
village.
close space.
Being more intentful with it.
Yeah, just something that put out there.
Well,
but
and I'll also
to-
throw into that, cause I agree, one, that if it were to look like this, that you would want the building as parallel to the pond as possible to maximize the usage. Without having the amenities on this map and just trying to, again, map out for the future, where do you foresee the stage that has been mentioned being?
It's not moved.
Still there.
Right there?
Yeah.
So,
None of that stuff is moved.
Yeah,
Okay,
it's
so there-
still
there's-
reflected on this one, Victor, it's just not shown.
yeah,
Right.
well, I was just trying to, kind of defeat two purposes here of, you have the outdoor area marked on here. You know, what is that I know this is the old one, but what would that outdoor area be? You know, would that be possibility of combining whatever would be there with the stage? The distillery that I had looked at previously was Two Silos Brewing, and it's very similar to.
That's the one in Virginia?
Yeah, the one in Virginia.
That's a good point.
Two Silos Brewing Co. And what you're trying to accomplish here, and again, just looking at their layout of their facilities, is very similar, where they have two buildings and a stage. And then they can maximize the space in between, for, again, events, whatever. So, again, it's just trying to be more intentful with the overall planning, because if you have the stage kind of out of the way where all the activity is going on, I'm just trying to wrap my head around that portion.
I will just say it's really difficult to, the residential part of this plan, we have MI here. We have a builder who's invested in this project, they're ready to go, we're excited to have them as part of the team. The commercial side it's somewhat phase two, that's gonna be land that West Fork Whiskey owns. And it's not gonna happen tomorrow, I'm working on it as fast as I can because I don't wanna pay the property taxes on it personally. But we were asked to develop a commercial plan for something that we don't have a buyer right now, we're just putting something in place that we think could be a really good fit. And that building could move a little bit like this. You know, we're doing the best that we can with very quick feedback on a timeline whenever, I mean, 2 weeks ago, this plan just said Block A, commercial. And we were tasked with maximizing parking, changing a road, and coming up with as much commercial as we could. And we've been working our butts off trying to get there, trying to accommodate as best as we can. And we're working with other companies, we have some breweries that might be interested in building too, that could be a really good fit. But I mean, I just say it's been a tall order on a short timeline to change a road and maximize a commercial space in a 8 to 12 day period.
Well, one, that's kind of my point with speaking with potential breweries and so forth, again, just wanting to maximize the space. But to the other point, we don't want to over-engineer this area because we don't know what it's gonna look like. So you know, this might be regressing, but maybe if it comes to a certain point of it has to be just block A, because in order to give you the flexibility of what it'll look like in the future with potential users, so forth, what the building will look like.
That's not gonna happen.
Okay.
We've been given direction, we need to show this level of detail at this, for this
Okay.
project.
So forget that. But again, not wanting to.
Sorry.
Here.
Disregard that.
Yeah.
In general, I would agree with you, but.
We understand, this is important commercial. As 191st develops, I know right now we're the only shop in town on 191st Street, but we know where it's gonna go, as the road changes, and it's important land that's being protected by the council and by the APC, and we appreciate that. So we get why they wanna see it, for sure, but just know we're doing our best. We're not perfect, we're never gonna be perfect, we're a whiskey company. So, you know, just, we're trying as best we can.
So to try to wrap up and shift gears a little bit, again, going back to the residential aspect. I just mentioned the lot concerns because that was what was really hit home to me when this was first introduced from council, you know, spanning from one removal to half removal, you know, and obviously that's not feasible, but just making it known to you that that's still a concern, so come prepared at council of trying to make a case of why it needs to be this way.
I'll add on to Jonathan's comment earlier. I mean, I think we've tried to make this cohesive and flow. I think putting a standalone outlier commercial use on this side, I think defeats a lot of that. You suddenly, it looks like an afterthought, and it looks like it's out of place. And then it looks like, I mean, I think that tried to be true to the concerns and also recognize that you are creating a district and not just developments that are next to each other.
Yeah.
And I think that's the challenge.
What's the land like to the east of that zone currently? It's residential, isn't it?
Ag.
Oh, it's one other block over before it changes, cause that's Pictor's house or whoever.
Well, Victor's house is right where this parking lot is.
Oh, it is? Okay.
So this is Zach, then you jump over into everything.
The property next door is gonna have some unique challenge as well. It's gonna have commercial frontage, and it's gonna be adjacent to residential on every other side.
Yeah.
And a little bit of a disjointed area to the far northeast of it. That's really all residential, yeah.
One other suggestion we thought of, potentially to add a little more parking is sliding that southern building down closer to 191st Street. So you could pick up some space there, you may be able to get another row of parking. I know.
Yeah, it just gets a little scary, cause
the details here.
right of way for how wide the road's gonna be, I think is 150 feet, and it could be 150 feet north, south, 75 on each side of
Well,
where
that's
it is
not,
currently.
that's not known, okay. Well,
So it's like, we don't wanna put it too close and then be where the path is supposed to go.
But the city does own the property on the other side of the road.
Yeah, that's
Maybe.
true.
Part of it.
Today they do.
Directly across, yeah. No, directly across from Pictures at Home.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's home and there's Westfield
That's
property.
right, there is.
Directly across from us, they own, that's great. Directly across from Pictures at Home.
Yeah,
Oh, there's another property there.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right in front of.
Well, if you shift it south, we're less likely to put 150 on one side, so maybe you can hedge your own bet, just put it there.
okay. Well, anyway, something that, if it works out, I mean, you may be able to pick up another row of whatever, 20 spaces or something.
If you could slide that building
South,
south 20 feet, probably more like 35 feet.
yeah. I mean, if you're showing zero setbacks on your standards, I mean, you can move that thing close to right away you want.
That'd make it feel like a village.
It would. So, something to think about.
If I'm not mistaken, that's pretty close to right where the bend will go, correct, if I'm staring at this in the right way.
It's going right under our pond right there.
Yeah, so I mean, that.
Would be awesome.
It would be on the, right at the end of the straight, right at the beginning of the curve, I think.
I feel like the future right of way for the expansion of 191st has been determined. Looking at the
feel like it
GIS.
is too. That's where I'm staring too. I mean, it's cut in already.
Well, you have the right of way for the roundabout and the roadway. Is it the alignment as it comes from the east, right?
And there's still easements to figure out on top of that. I mean, there's gonna be utility easements.
You got utilities, you got water that runs across that frontage now.
So the roundabout is gonna happen. Yes,
Yeah, it will eventually.
Currently not funded,
Yeah.
highly expected.
But intended.
capital improvement plan says 2026.
Did I see it on the
14 million.
2050 year tip plan?
Welcome to government.
I think that's the.
We know how much it's gonna cost, we just don't know how we're gonna pay.
Yeah, right.
I thought that was the spring mill 191.
That's why we need to get these
26.
buildings done, saying
I'll have to look at it.
how, but we just can't tell you how we want them now.
It says next year doing Tomlinson to Grand Park Boulevard widening, and then
Oh,
2026 is the roundabout and connecting 191st and right.
The 191st portion, yes, the roundabout portion, I still don't think so. Could be.
Could swear I saw that on that capital improvement plan.
That's probably the one.
Hey, Mike, I got a question for you. Just based on your previous experience.
Sure.
There's an obligation by the utility company to get back to them in a timely manner. Is that
Yes,
fair?
typically. The law says a reasonable manner, and in their operation maintenance manual, they have to set a time frame. I don't know what Veterans Center Points is, but, so the law typically is not as detailed prescriptive. It's, you have to get to them in a reasonable amount of time, and then the commission says define reasonable. That's how we get to that point. I don't
I
know.
would just like the feedback to get back to our group that we could escalate, that if they're not answering in a timely manner, like that's the stuff that needs to be talked
Well,
about.
this is my estimation, again, I love dunking on Center Point as much as I can. Let's take that from off the record too. If they've ignored the current review, and all of a sudden they find out there's something going on here, or they're under a little bit of pressure, under a little bit of gun, they probably won't have enough time, by the time we're gonna meet, to answer the question I've asked. But that's kind of fixed.
I wanna be able to walk away today with a clear message of, is it 1A, 1B, like, depending on where we're at with the pipeline. I think if we wanna continue to, be cohesive and we work really hard to make this a better structure, so there's not a lot of back and forth and multiple meetings. My ask today from our group is to walk away with a clear message of, here's an outline of some issues that we wanna see addressed. I think we just need to provide a good summary and expectation for them. I think that's only fair to all of us too. So that is my ask, whether it's, hey, here's the plan, if they can work with you with the pipeline, if they can't. But at some point, there has to be an answer too.
Well, and I guess what it sounded like to me, and I guess you could probably summarize that we were intending potentially to have plan A, plan B, road cut, no road, or road connecting, no connection. But chances are, we wouldn't have the answer. We were giving them that if, I think the stipulation would be, if they could do it, they should do it.
At the time, yeah, I mean, at the time of development plan, basically, if there's consent or whatever word we wanna use, approval from the pipeline company to either cross or pave within, parking or whatever, within that pipeline easement.
I appreciate all the work. I mean,
Yeah.
I get it. In tight timelines, totally understand it, respect it. But at some point, it's our job here also to give some clear instruction on, hey, here's the remaining items and here's what we'd like to see.
I mean, in my opinion, I personally agree with Chris that I'd like this no matter what, but I certainly would prefer the road. But at the end of the day, it either may not be feasible, or two, council may disagree with me, and that's why they're elected and I'm appointed. But my position was, if I was gonna force something, I would say I'd want the road. But I don't think, knowing my knowledge with Centerpoint, if we talk to them tomorrow, if you guys talk to them tomorrow and they're like, oh my gosh, we didn't know this was happening, for whatever reason, there's no way they would have the answer in time. Because if I were gonna send them as a member of the commission to go out, I'd want them to get depths on that entire line to give them the answer. Who knows how long it would take to get a crew to do that?
Well, let's see where we're at
Yep.
with them, right?
Yep.
One thing we do know is they have not seen a plan that shows a crossing.
Sure.
So if I surprise them tomorrow with a crossing, we're starting.
They might answer a little quicker.
We're starting from square one.
You are.
So you guys definitely have depths from some point, because you got a previous encroachment. So let's hope that 3 years ago, they potholed it, it's surveyed, and we have a good starting point.
Yep.
From an elevation perspective,
Yep.
and then we'll see where we're at.
And we can get updates before the next meeting. I mean, that's part of it as well.
And I'm confident, maybe we don't, can we get to someone at Centerpoint and talk to somebody? My hope would be is we can.
I think you can get someone to talk to you.
Getting an answer.
I know this
not so
person's not an
much.
engineer, they work with their public awareness team, which is specific to the knowledge of pipeline right-of-ways, what it is, what it means to citizens and buildings, and they may still need an engineering review if they've not actually done it.
Right.
So I can't guarantee that they're gonna have an answer, I just know that I can get you a phone call.
And getting someone on the inside, that's half the battle usually.
Sure, yep, I understand.
And then just to answer the question for where we're at with the roundabout. Again, it is not currently identified to have a funding source, and it is potentially scheduled for between 26 and 27. But again, that's all pending if we get funding sources, so.
Anybody have anything else that they would like to bring up? How was your? Kevin?
I gave up, trying to keep things in order here, cause it was all, but I did have one other question, before we do that. See the mouse. So this green area here, you have any
That's approved for
thoughts?
parking lot.
Parking, this is the expanded parking for, gotcha.
Yeah, when we have a 300-person wedding and a 300-seat restaurant that's packed out, our parking lot is full.
Gotcha.
So we're already approved to add parking.
Where? I mean, I see the piece, but what, cause what I'm saying is the pipeline's right there too.
It's right in between the pipeline and where the future
So
road
it's
is.
small enough to not.
It's like 50 spots.
I gotcha.
Yeah, it's a small
Okay.
one.
Thanks.
Should that, to the point though, should that be detailed on here just for everyone's awareness knowledge, or?
We don't wanna confuse people to think that they're approving that, cause it's already.
It's already
Sure,
approved,
sure.
I remember that now that you.
And maybe we
So
put
maybe
it
you
in
don't-
like gray or something,
Yeah,
but
maybe you don't make it green, cause it looks like it's part of this proposal.
That's a good idea, make it gray, that's something that's already previously approved.
Or just make it the same as where our building is,
Yeah.
not part of this.
Right, exactly.
Part of what we already have.
Yeah, right.
That'd be my suggestion, just don't put color to it.
That's good enough.
that's probably an easy one to get.
It's the easiest thing we gave you today?
Pretty sure.
You can do that before Friday, can't you?
Well, we're always kept on our toes. I didn't think about the gas lines and
parking lot with the
easements was gonna
pipeline
be
up
their
there, too.
topic of conversation.
You never know with government.
That's why we hold meetings. Can never predict for sure what will happen.
Alright,
Alright, Kevin.
so in no particular order here, really kind of in order of discussion, there was some, I think, an early comment about, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think looking at widening this stub to, I mean, it looks like it may be a single lane, maybe do we want it
Yeah,
to be two lane?
the revised plan that we handed out, I think highlights it.
Okay,
Well, it's still there, but it's not a full width.
that looks like a single,
Yeah, we'll widen that.
That's intended to be a roadway.
okay, so make sure that's
Just about the same
reflected.
width as the rest of the
Yeah.
street view.
We talked about it on an earlier conference call.
Alright, so this, just for your benefit, this is, we're gonna summarize the takeaways or the outstanding issues. Make sure everybody's on the same page before we leave this room as best we can to hopefully expedite kind of the next step to this process. So that's item one. Item two, I have this creation of option one, option two, site plans. One showing vehicular connection between West Fort Whiskey and this project, and or possibly looking at options to expanding parking into that space. And then it'd be pending approval of the pipeline company at the time of development, if we were to go with that option. And then the second option would be basically not showing that connection, right, just like you have it now. So that's item two. Item three, updating the townhome elevation exhibits to reflect the color scheme that we talked about tonight. The darker siding, shades and the darker masonry. Next item, confirm the pond size for the concept plan exhibit and adjust as necessary. I don't know what to do with this one. I mean, this was kind of I don't know that we settled on anything, but just again, kind of consider some of the either orientation or position of these buildings to maximize parking, to perhaps create some additional parking areas and just maximize the cohesion of the commercial space. I know there's some subjectivity there, but I think that was general discussion. And then the last one was remove the color from this triangle piece.
What about the buffer around that?
Oh,
Screen,
thank you.
the alley
Yep.
screening.
Thank you.
Never listens.
So,
You know,
That was me that time.
so
I thought it was on.
Give you some credit.
Thanks.
perfect landscape buffering along the what is
Northwest.
it? Wiley property.
I think alleyways visible along Horton Road is how I was thinking about.
Okay.
Authoring on the fly, that's what we do.
Do you have anything else that I missed?
Yeah, the only thing, I think we've talked about this a few times, was just making sure the new concept plan includes the amenities, the adjusted
Yeah.
amenities.
Thank you.
But we've covered that a few times.
Anybody else have recollections that haven't been reviewed? Not. Appreciate your attendance. Lots of luck trying to figure out what to do.
Appreciate all the feedback.
All right, I think we've completed our discussion on this item sufficiently. Which means then it's time to note that we have a continued item and move on to reports and comments. Item first is plan commission members. Any comments for each other on anything? Seeing none or hearing none, city council liaison? Anything fun to report from council?
Yeah, just briefly, we took action last week on Westwood and the UDO patch, as well as ordinance 24-26 pledging general revenue bonds, RDA. Those were all unanimous positive votes. And then under new business, we had resolution 24-117. Finding that property owners are in substantial compliance for tax abatement purposes. It's something we do every year. Ordinance 24-29, reestablishing Fund 205 for parks for beautification purposes. Ordinance 24-30, that is the newly announced H Steakhouse, Najum PUD, which will be at the southwest corner of Mill Street and Jersey Street. The city owns one of the houses that's been used for Westfield welcome storage for events, and then longtime residents house as well. We'll be seeing that next month. And then ordinance 24-31, which is a Springwater PUD amendment, very minor textual amendment, no big changes there. So that was it.
Thank you.
How are we doing on the abatement?
It's just a,
Like, were people in compliance, or did we find that a bunch were or were not, or?
yeah, a bunch were in
Were in
compliance.
compliance? That's
Yep,
cool.
there were no real shockers.
Yeah, cool. Thank you.
Yep.
I didn't know we did that. That's awesome.
BZA, we had a meeting with one item.
I had the honor. It was a very busy evening last Tuesday. And we approved a garage on a property.
Very good.
We're taking a boat out of somebody's yard, putting them in a garage. We're just here to make Westfield more beautiful.
Yeah, and you're soon gonna have even lesser responsibilities because of the.
We
UDO
talked
patch
about
group.
that.
Hence the reason that there was only one
Correct,
item on
correct.
that agenda.
Well, if you all recall, I think I asked Lauren explicitly at our last meeting, is this in effect before the next BCA meeting? And the answer was yes.
Yep.
I think we were out in 17 minutes and home for a tip, so it was.
That's impressive.
It was a decent
Priorities. We've had some pretty short APC meetings too, but we've beat 17, so you keep trying. Plat committee, meeting was canceled, so no report. Community Development Department, any words of wisdom for us tonight?
No words of wisdom, but did wanna make an introduction. On the end here, our intern for the summer is Lauren Shank. So comes to us from Ball State, and we're excited to have her for the summer.
Thank you.
And then also our full-time planner that just graduated now starts full-time starting today. So Shelby Alexander. So she'll be doing mostly, I think, long-range planning stuff. So you'll see her working on comp plan and other planning activities. Maybe, I'm sure we'll bring her around and meet you guys at some point. So we're excited to have them on board.
And she's beyond the point of being able to be scared off easily.
Yes, I know.
Play your cards right, maybe you'll get to stick around unless we've shown you something you don't wanna be a part of.
What internships are all
Hope not.
Mr. President, I have a question for staff. I wanted, not that I didn't wanna hide anything from our petitioner, but I wanted to be courteous to our petitioner. This last one, and this isn't staff's fault, this is clearly theirs. There just seemed to be, and maybe it's just me, there were just a lot more unanswered things that I'm used to. Am I correct in to say that? And if so, why, and again, why? That's a very loaded question. Like I said, this is not a staff issue.
That's an extension of my question from
Okay.
earlier.
They do what
Right.
we allow.
Correct, yeah. And again, this is not a staff issue.
Not a
I
staff
understand
issue.
what
I'm not-
they're saying as well.
let
There's a
me-
point of expedition. They wanna get shovels in the ground, they're ready. That's
Let me
fantastic.
answer that after we adjourn.
Okay, understood.
Speaking of,
I withdraw my question, Mr. President.
I will make a motion.
But before
Ashley,
I have one thing, I just wanted to say, this is my last meeting with you guys.
Oh, boo! Out of order, hit the gavel.
Another, one of my colleagues, some of you know her, Beth Copeland's gonna resign.
Oh, she's back?
She's back.
Okay.
But I will miss all of you, and I will be around probably here and there.
I ain't
You
gone, I'll be
waving your
around.
BZA throne as well?
Yes.
It's devastating.
You'll like Beth, Beth's back.
That's
back.
That will be best back.
we have choices 1A and 1B.
Yeah.
Yeah.
there you go.
We'll let you know what we decide.
It's
Wait,
the
literally,
depth
one A,
of-
one B.
It's the
Ashley and
depth of,
Beth.
it's the depth of representation, right, there you go. So,
I see that.
people say we're the same person, so, it's okay.
You didn't know the difference, you couldn't tell the difference.
Exactly.
When did
Ashley, it was a
you
pleasure.
fill in for Beth? Like,
I think I took over from Beth, is it not quite 2 years ago, but just right around 2 years ago,
Been a while.
yeah.
So I'm sure she'll fill in
So
and
I'll
we'll see
fill
her from
in,
time to
I'll
have
probably come
enjoyed
back
your
in 2
company.
years, you know, it is what it is.
yeah, I'll just do rotation.
We'll just-
Thank you.
Yes.
We'll see you in 2 years.
No, I'm sure I'll be back between now and
Oh,
then.
okay, good, good.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate
very much.
Alright, now, you wanted
Now
to
you
make
can
a
go.
motion to adjourn, Mr.
Dying here,
Blomqvist?
Kevin has to say, motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion from Mr. Blomqvist and seconded by Victor McCarty. Once again, we're all present, so we can do this on a voice vote. Everybody in favor of adjourning, say aye.
Aye.
Is there anybody opposed or abstaining from adjourning? We are adjourned at 8:25.
I'm waiting for.
With bated breath.
Hello?
Does the recording stop, Mr. Larson?